Hi, this is Anya Jay, and today we will be exploring how false narratives can affect the relationships we have with other human beings. Well, we often find ourselves in emotional and psychological anguish thinking about what others think of us. When we interact with people, a version of us, like an avatar of sorts, gets created in other people's mind. And that's how the relationship begins. A few weeks back, I experienced a fallout with two supposed close friends, both women and who I interacted with on a daily basis. Though it wasn't my first experience with frenemies, it really provoked a lot of thinking. I was curious as to the kind of version they had built of me in their minds and also my narratives of them. I've come to realize and believe that most conflict in relationships stems from false narratives. To understand this, we also need to explore the concepts of fake empathy, bounded rationality, self-serving bias, insecurity, and need for validation. Empathy is different from sympathy. Sympathy is when you tell someone who's having a tough time phrases like, "Oh, you must be having a really hard time," or "Don't worry, time will heal." It's more like using phrases out of a common dictionary. We say the appropriate things in a situation in a hope to reduce the other person's pain. Emotional involvement is bare minimum. This isn't empowering to the other person, as the one experiencing pain or distress doesn't feel helped, in fact, more alienated. In empathy, when it is real, you are in sync with the other person's feelings, and the other person also feels validated and heard. The conversation exchange seems more positive, and both parties feel lighter. However, in case of fake sympathy, which some individuals are capable of due to their high ability to know what the other person wants to hear, they have learned it as a way to get what they want out of a person or situation. Someone may try to empathize with you, however, they are seeking to gain your trust, only so that their needs are met. They want you on their side to fulfill a desire, need, or purpose. Maybe popularity, a feeling of importance, connection, your knowledge, social connections, financial perks, or any sort of favor that comes at your cost later. In true empathy, the vulnerable individual feels encouraged and empowered without fearing that anything is expected out of them or that they have a price to pay emotionally, psychologically, socially, or financially to receive kindness from the supposed friendship. So, this is a good litmus test to filter out fake friends. Now, coming to bounded rationality. This concept is mostly used in decision making models, but socially it means that we decide upon things based only on what information or resources we have at our disposal. That your understanding of another human being will be limited to the kind of information or experiences you already have. For example, you have just experienced a situation or life circumstances that you want to share with a friend, an uncomfortable or a pleasant one. Now, if you try and share this with someone who hasn't experienced a similar situation, the likelihood is more that they won't understand nor fathom your experience the way you perceive it. As human beings, we long for connection. Sometimes we are limited in scope to establish connections with people who we come in contact with. Even when you know they are very different from you, have different intellects, backgrounds, and experiences, we still try to establish rapport as the need to connect and also establish safety in numbers is strong. That's why we often overlook red flags and busy ourselves in creating avatars of the individual who we need them to be in a hope that they would turn out to be like that. It's only after some time has passed and certain situations arise that you get a reality check. By then, you already have risked your emotional and psychological self. Now, coming to the concept of self-serving bias, this is the conditioning when you attribute success to yourself and failure to the other person. This is the main reason you find that people don't change as often as you expect them to, as they truly believe that they are right or their version in which they are the ones who did or give more is true. Ultimately, everyone wants to be the good, likable hero in their version, even though it may not be entirely true, as they are only counting the things they do and not consider what the other person brought to the table. In short, you are partial to yourself and the people you love. This is also the reason why, even if someone says negative about a family member or friend, and even if it's true, you will not believe it and blame the other person. In short, your moral compass doesn't work accurately, and right is always pointed towards yourself and your extended self, that is, the family, friend, or loved one. Now, this gets tricky when you receive criticism or someone calls you out for your bad behavior or says something negative. Your sense of self gets challenged. You feel hurt, especially if someone ignores you or makes you feel like you don't even exist. The individuals who have a fragile and small sense of self, it comes as a big blow to their ego. How dare someone reject me or say no to me? I do so much. Why can't they behave or do as I expect? Who do they think they are? That's because you yourself are unsure of who you are. Those with good sense of self or self-esteem are confident in who they are, assuming they have assessed themselves unbiasedly. Otherwise, someone can come along and their sense of self can get shattered as well if they have built up a persona that is not authentic. This works negatively when individuals are bullied or gaslighted, and even if they are good human beings, they struggle with guilt and shame. And it takes the form of arrogance when people believe themselves to be good, however, they aren't really that way, leading to a sense of grandiosity and narcissism which has its own pitfalls. Criticism breeds insecurity because someone has challenged and is threatening your avatar you are showing to the world. Those with less empathy, poor moral judgment, poor ethics, having narcissistic traits, those who are not self-aware or lack a sense of self-agency will not even entertain the thought that they can be wrong or flawed, as their sense of self is already too small and shaky, so even a little threat will prompt them to seek validation from others and indulge in behaviors to protect their avatars. It's like photo editing your pictures, and if someone has realized you have used filters, you deny it. Sometimes people also create fake avatars or narratives online as well as offline. Those whose moral compass is strong, they will entertain the thoughts of, what if I was wrong? Even if they weren't. However, traumas and insecurities will make individuals take up unhealthy means to prove to the world their versions and will engage in sabotage like indulging in gossip, manipulation and lies in order to validate their own experiences and the self. Maybe I'm doing that right now. But that's how we question ourselves. Ultimately, this is what leads to creating false narratives. In this whole process, they have managed to create a version of themselves who they really aren't, and also the versions of others limited to their belief systems. Most often, conflicts in friendships and relationships arise when you force these versions onto one another. It deteriorates even more if one indulges in the sabotage of the other consciously or unconsciously, like gossiping or backbiting. These are outcomes of the false narratives that people try to build and convince others of the version they see you as. Sycophancy is when the false narrative is done in a positive light. It is still false as it is not close to the true version of the individual. Most people spend their entire lives living in false narratives, fake roles and avatars, and also keep holding others' distorted versions in their own mini metaverses. Even till the end, they are unable to gather the courage nor the resilience that requires one to wake up to the reality. Some do, and this is what people refer to when they talk about awakening, self-actualization, coming out of the matrix. Unfortunately, the matrix can have a matrix within itself as well. It's like a hall of mirrors. If you have been living a life for too long, it takes a lot to really find yourself back. But many a times, people get comfortable living the lie as well. Even if you try to wake such people, your efforts will go in vain, as it's akin to talking sense to an individual who is intoxicated and drunk. No matter how sensible and mature you behave, what arguments and proof you give, what does a drunk man say? I am not drunk. For them, what matters is to stay high and do what they please. All you can do is allow them to be on their own ride and not let them drive you. No one can perceive 100% right version of anyone, not even the individual themselves, as humans are dynamic and spontaneous and not static. However, relativity matters. How much off balance you are from the true version of yourself and another. More the disparity in the perception of the true self and supposed self, higher chances of mental distress and strained relationship with others and yourself. The solution to this is to be able to come to correct assessments of oneself at least, and have narratives based on truth. If one realizes or isn't ready to accept the other's narrative, it is best to maintain distance and disengage. It also really helps to stay connected to individuals who bring out your authenticity. However, many a times counterintuitively, we embark on a mission to prove to the world versions of ourselves we want them to see. How kind or bright you are. But the very act of trying to prove yourself leads to self-betrayal. You're only reiterating the fact that you don't accept yourself or don't like your own company. It's very rarely that you come across individuals who are able to see and accept your true narratives, and that is what leads to long-lasting and true friendships. Well, that's all from me, and wishing that you enjoy your own company and feel comfortable in your own skin. Wishing that the narratives you build for yourself and others may